Richard Speck, a drifter from Illinois, became one of America's most notorious mass murderers on July 13, 14, 1966, when he broke into a Chicago townhouse and brutally killed 8 student nurses. Over 4 hours, he bound, stabbed, strangled, and raped his victims, leaving a blood-soaked scene that shocked the nation. Only one woman, Corazon Amurao, survived by hiding under a bed. In this documentary, we dissect Speck's horrific crimes through the lens of psychology and psychoanalysis, exploring the twisted mind behind this night of terror. Why focus on Richard Speck for a documentary that'll make your heart race and your stomach churn? His crimes aren't just a dark chapter in history. They're a psychological puzzle that demands unraveling. Speck didn't kill in a frenzy or for a cause. He walked into a house of strangers and, over hours, methodically slaughtered 8 young women, all while high on drugs and alcohol. His cold, calculated brutality, paired with his chilling lack of remorse, makes him a prime case for understanding the darkest corners of the human psyche. Picture this: a quiet Chicago night, 1966. 9 nurses sleep in their townhouse dorm. A knock at the door. Speck, armed with a knife and gun, forces his way in. One by one, he ties them up with bed sheets, leads them out, and slaughters them, stabbing, strangling, slashing throats. Blood pools on the floor, bodies pile up, and the air fills with muffled screams. The Guardian reported the final victim, Gloria Davy, was raped before being strangled, her body left broken. Speck walked away, leaving one survivor, Corazon Amurao, hidden under a bed, trembling as death stalked the house. This wasn't just murder. It was a nightmare orchestrated by a man whose mind we need to understand. Let's go back to where it all began, to the boy who became a specter of evil. Richard Benjamin Speck was born on December 6, 1941, in Kirkwood, Illinois, the 7th of 8 kids in a religious, teetotaling family. Britannica notes his early years were marked by loss. His father, Benjamin, died of a heart attack when Richard was 6. That loss hit hard. Speck idolized his dad, a steady figure in a chaotic world. Psychologists might point to this as a traumatic disruption, where the loss of a primary role model shattered his emotional foundation. His mother, Mary, remarried a drunk named Carl Lindbergh, who moved the family to Dallas, Texas. Lindbergh was a nightmare, verbally and emotionally abusive. He tormented Richard, calling him worthless. Andy biography describes how this abuse fueled Speck's hatred, especially toward authority figures. By his teens, Speck was a dropout, barely scraping through high school before quitting at 16. He was already a heavy drinker, racking up arrests for trespassing and public drunkenness. Psychologically, this screams conduct disorder, a precursor to antisocial personality disorder, a pattern of rule-breaking, impulsivity, and disregard for others. Psychoanalytically, Freud might argue Speck's rage stemmed from oppression. His grief over his father and hatred for his stepfather were buried, festering into a need to dominate and destroy. He married Shirley Malone at 20, fathering a daughter, but even then, he was cheating with prostitutes, spending money meant for his family. His life was a spiral of booze, drugs, and petty crime, burglary, assault, even a rape in 1965, where he held a knife to a woman's throat. Why did Speck turn to murder? His narcissistic traits likely played a role. He craved control, especially over women, who he saw as objects. His misogyny, noted in film daily, was deep-rooted, possibly from his mother's perceived betrayal in remarrying and his stepfather's abuse. Add an alcohol dependence, which lowered his inhibitions, and you've got a ticking bomb. By 1966, jobless and drifting in Chicago, Speck was a man with nothing to lose, and a tattoo on his arm that read, "Born to Raise Hell." Speck's crimes were a masterclass in methodical terror. On July 13, 1966, around 11 p.m., he knocked on the door of a townhouse at 2319 East 100th Street, Chicago, a dorm for student nurses. The Chicago History Museum recounts how Corazon Amurao opened the door, only to face a pockmarked man with a gun. Speck forced his way in, herding 9 women into a room. He tied their hands with torn bedsheets, his knife glinting in the dim light. Over 4 hours, he led them out one by one, each meeting a gruesome end. The Crime of the Century by Dennis L. Brio and William J. Martin details the carnage. Pamela Wilkening was stabbed through the heart, her body left slumped. Patricia Matusek's throat was slashed, blood spraying the walls. Nina Jo Schmale was strangled, her face frozen in terror. Gloria Davy, the last, was raped and strangled, her body sprawled across a couch. Why so brutal? Psychologically, Speck's sadistic personality traits shone through. He didn't just kill, he prolonged their suffering, relishing their fear. This aligns with sexual sadism disorder, where power and pain fuel arousal. His choice to rape Gloria Davy suggests a need to dominate, to own his victims completely. Psychoanalytically, this was projection. Speck displays his hatred for women, rooted in his mother and stepfather's dynamic, onto these strangers. He later claimed he was high on drugs and alcohol, but in a 1978 interview with the Chicago Tribune, he chillingly said he could have done it sober, undercutting any excuse. Speck's victims, Gloria Davy, Patricia Matusek, Nina Jo Schmale, Pamela Wilkening, Suzanne Ferris, Marion Jordan, Merlita Gargullo, and Valentina Passion, were young nurses, mostly in their early 20s, full of promise. Why them? Psychologically, Speck's choice wasn't random. Film Daily notes his lifelong misogyny. Nurses, symbols of care and authority, likely triggered his deep-seated resentment toward women. They were vulnerable, living together in a dorm, easy targets for a predator. His dehumanization of them, tying them up, treating them as objects, reflects antisocial personality disorder, where empathy is non-existent. A survivor's account brings the horror to life. Corazon Amurao, quoted in The Crime of the Century, hid under a bed, hearing her friends' muffled cries as Speck led them away. She stayed silent for hours, paralyzed by fear, until dawn broke and she crawled out to find a blood-soaked house. "They are all dead," she screamed from a window. Her testimony later nailed Speck, but the trauma lingered. Speck's methodical pacing, 20 to 30 minutes between killings, shows a chilling control, not a frenzy. This was predatory aggression, driven by a need to dominate, not just destroy. Let's dive into Speck's mind, a maze of darkness. Psychologically, he fits the profile of antisocial personality disorder. Impulsivity, lack of remorse, and a history of violence. His heavy drinking and drug use exacerbated this, lowering inhibitions. Narcissistic traits also emerge. He saw himself as untouchable, even boasting about his crimes in a 1988 prison video. His sadistic tendencies are clear in the prolonged torture of his victims, a hallmark of deriving pleasure from others' pain. Psychoanalytically, Speck's actions scream repression and displacement. His father's death and his stepfather's abuse created a well of rage he couldn't express directly. Freud would say he displaced this onto women, who symbolized both his mother's betrayal and his stepfather's emasculation. Jung's concept of the shadow fits too. Speck's good son facaded a monster that erupted in violence. His claim of an accomplice, never proven, suggests denial, a defense mechanism to shift blame. Why nurses? They represented order, something his chaotic life lacked, and destroying them was his twisted way of reclaiming control. Imagine this. It's 1 a.m., July 14th, 1966. The townhouse is silent, except for the creak of floorboards. Corazon Amurao, trembling under a bed, hears Suzanne Ferris beg, "Please don't." Speck's knife flashes blood sprays, and her body hits the floor. Each victim faced a similar fate, bound, helpless, watching friends disappear into the dark. The New York Times described the scene police found. Bodies strewn across rooms, blood congealed in pools, bedsheets twisted into ropes. A neighbor told CBS Chicago, "The air felt heavy, like death itself was still there." Speck's final act, raping and strangling Gloria Davy, was a sick crescendo, his need for dominance laid bare. Police reports note the precision of his knots, suggesting a chilling calm. This wasn't a blackout rage. Speck was in control, savoring the power. His later prison video, where he bragged about the killings while high on cocaine, shows no remorse, only a twisted pride. The nurses' youth and vulnerability made their deaths all the more horrifying, a fact that gripped Chicago and the nation. Speck's reign of terror ended fast. On July 17, 1966, after a failed suicide attempt, He was spotted in a hospital. A doctor recognized his Born to Raise Hell tattoo. Tipped off by Amurao's description. Arrested, Speck faced trial in 1967. Corazon Amurao's testimony was electric. She pointed at him, saying, "This is the man." The jury took 49 minutes to convict him on all 8 counts, sentencing him to death. In 1972, the Supreme Court's ruling against capital punishment commuted his sentence to 1,200 years. Speck died of a heart attack in 1991, one day shy of 50, at Stateville Correctional Center. Philosophically, Speck's life is a grim study in nihilism. He believed in nothing, lived for nothing, as he admitted in his prison video. I don't give a damn if they throw me in the gutter. From a Nietzschean perspective, his will to power was warped into destruction, a need to dominate born from feeling powerless. Existentially, Speck's story asks, what happens when a man rejects meaning, embracing only chaos? His death wasn't justice. It was an empty end to an empty life, leaving behind only pain and a warning. The human mind, unchecked, can birth monsters.